What was the catalyst for the kind of significant growth over the last 10 years then?
We used to have paper files, and we had one computer that we came back to on a Friday, and it was a rush back to the office to be able to use it. And we had portable printers. You know, the world's so different that I'm irrelevant.
The brand is all these individual people, and it's the client's perception of the service they receive. How do you make sure that that is aligned to kind of your vision of what PM+M should be?
Maybe we're up against a new, very quick deadline, but to achieve that, our quality might drop. And it's like, oh, which you want to do? Do you want to achieve the deadline with a drop in quality, or do you want to deliver high quality but beyond the deadline? And what's doing the right thing here? I'm not a robot, and I'm not perfect. Nobody is. You know, you might have had a bad night's sleep, or something might have happened at home. The kids, you know, playing up, trying to get to school or nursery or whatever it is. There's 101 things that might knock you off balance. Then you react in a way that you would have chosen not to if you could replay it.
Hi everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of Best in Class, the business podcast. And I am thrilled this week to have Helen Clayton join me. Helen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Honoured to be here.
Good. So we haven't actually had much of a kind of prior relationship from a business perspective, but I have known about your business for a very, very long time, and I've done some recruitment for the business through my career. But yeah, I kind of wanted you to come on because you're in an industry that a lot of people perceive as very kind of traditional and could say archaic. But I think you're really, really progressive business in terms of what you do. And even before I started working with you, I was really aware of the organisation and just how much investment you do in people. So yeah, without me kind of doing the introduction, let me pass over to you. Do you want to kind of, for the listeners, give an introduction of kind of who you are, who the business is, what the business does, and then we'll get on to kind of what it is that you guys do really, really well.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. So I'm Helen Clayton. I'm the managing partner at PM+M, and PM+M is a group of accountancy, business advisory, and financial planning businesses. We are based in historically for over 100 years in East Lancashire in Blackburn. And
I didn't know you'd been going over 100 years.
Yeah,
Wow,
we're
it's
well
incredible.
old. Well old. But we have also a second office based in Bury, so that gives us a reach into Greater Manchester as well. I think I've been in post for 18 months, and what I've always loved about PM+M, so I'm coming up for 10 years with the business overall, what I've always loved about PM+M is that we get stuff done. And that's really important to me because you can talk the hind legs off a donkey and not actually do anything. And that doesn't actually achieve any progression or change or move forward. So that was the big thing that attracted me to joining. And I'm really passionate about keeping that momentum going with getting things done. But I guess overall we're about 180 people now, which has grown from 80 people 10 years ago. So fast growth through that period, but not just putting bums on seats. It's about thinking, what skills do we need? What experience do we need? So that's recruitment at all levels, and into new posts all the time because the world changes. We need new skills. We need new expertise. So yeah.
What was the catalyst for the kind of significant growth over the last 10 years then?
It probably comes from a range of sources. I think us being really passionate about the service that we provide to our clients. And that's not just a compliance service. That is really getting to know our clients, getting to understand them and getting to grips with what their objectives are, what their dreams are, whether that's from a personal perspective or whether that's for their business and their employees. And by getting to know people and developing great relationships, it secures those relationships for longer. And I think in terms of the people side of the business, it's the same. It's relationship driven. Our values are really, really strong. And we see that through our Investors in People survey, for example. but it really does mean something. Everybody talks about, oh yeah, values, and it's a bit fluffy, and actually it's not, because it values hold behaviors, and behaviors hold relationships, and relationships drive everything else. So I think it comes from that passion about people, whether that's clients or the team internally.
Why do you hold so much value in your people?
If we don't have the people, and we don't have the right people, and we don't have the right people in the right seats, we can't help our clients. It's as simple as that for me. So you mentioned people first. That is entirely exactly where I come from. So for me, if you focus on the people first, everything else should follow. Because if you've got the right people in doing the right things at the right level, they're motivated, they're engaged, they love coming to work. And I'm not saying everybody loves coming to PM+M to work every single day. That's just like utopia, isn't it? But on average, most people enjoy coming to work for PM+M because there are opportunities, there are different challenges, there are different ways of progressing, and it's all about the individual. It's not one size fits all. So for me, if you get all of that right, people are passionate about delivering great service to their clients. People are passionate about winning new clients or doing more work with existing clients. And then what happens is those relationships all build and build and build, and the profit follows. For me, if you focus on profit, that drives it can drive all kinds of behaviors. It can drive some great behaviors. It can drive some great behaviors around pricing the work, but it can also drive some really bad behaviors around, actually, this is my client and nobody's going to touch it, and this is how I get on, and this is how I progress through the firm. Every client is a PM+M client. They're not a client of an individual. And that then means that we have a team approach to each client. So we can use the specialisms, use the expertise and the experience, and bring people through all the time, developing them and teaching them and mentoring and coaching them, so that the whole thing just, for me, it's just really exciting. And if I could draw it, I would, but I'm a terrible artist. But it would be so many people with so many cross intersections of lines and communication that creates this wonderful thing where we get to help our clients every single day, and they tell us they're happy.
Yeah. A lot of what you said really resonated with me because, recruitment as an industry is notorious for bad service and bad delivery. And I feel a lot of that stems from, it's about putting profit and sales before the actual delivery of the job. I've always said, for me, recruitment is sales through service rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
So I find it very interesting that you're kind of talking about that. I guess one other bit that kind of stuck with me from what you just said was, every customer is a PM+M customer, not a individual's client or customer. I guess when you're recruiting, because that's how you've got the people who are in the business, but to grow, you have to recruit, and that's always a leap of faith. Always, always a leap of faith. You can interview as much as you want, you can reference as much as you want. There's always going to be a degree of, you're going to have to just hope it all works out. So I guess when you're recruiting and hiring, I'm going to guess that you're very kind of transparent around your culture, and this is what we are and this is what we're not. Do you find within the industry then, 'cause, I'm not an expert in kind of your industry, do you find that it is very kind of symptomatic of, well, that's my client? Do people have that in other organisations, and do you have to kind of break them out of that to come to PM?
I don't think, to answer that last question, no, I don't think we do. I don't see a lot of that. I think it's quite a historic, like you mentioned at the start, accountancy can be a bit of a traditional, archaic, that might be the view of it. And I think back in the 1980s, it was, it's my client, it's not PM+M client, like, and if I choose to move elsewhere, it's going to come with me because it's my relationship, and I've not let anybody touch it, so I've put my arms around it, and it's mine. But I
I'm
think
going on
as
holiday.
yeah,
Nobody's talking to
nobody
that
can
client
touch
while
it.
I'm
Yeah,
away.
absolutely. And that, that's how it used to be. But as accountancy and tax and everything that goes around it, and the regulation has increased, specifically around audit and financial planning services, that's meant our world is way more complex than it's ever been because of different things hitting into our ecosystem. So what you then need is you need to build experts rather than generalists. And generalists still have a place, don't get me wrong, but you need an expert in VAT. You need an expert in property tax because they're so bespoke. You can't play at it. The risk is too big. And if you
Well, as
play at it,
as a client, I want to know I'm getting the best advice
yeah,
possible, not somebody who goes, I know a little bit about that.
yeah,
No,
exactly.
I want the best. I'm paying for the best.
Yeah. You want to know the advice you're getting is correct. Or if there's multiple options, you want to know what those multiple options are and what the risks are around them, if there are any. So you do need the experts. And I think that's where then you kind of fill out that say you're a client of PM+M, you may want some accounting advice, but you may also want some bespoke tax advice, either for you personally or for your business. And it's about getting the experts in front of you to be able to give that bespoke advice to you. Because again, it's not one size fits all. Yes, we're bound by tax regulation and legislation and everything like that. And we very much operate within all of those rules, don't get me wrong. But there is bespoke advice to be given to different clients because everybody has different circumstances and actually different objectives in life. So if you want to retire at 50, for example, that's very different to somebody who wants to retire at 70. The conversation's different. So it's bespoke
Yeah.
in the advice, and that's where the experts come in. So you end up with a team of people advising you rather than one person who knows a bit about everything anymore. So I
Yeah.
don't think, in answer to your question, very long-winded answer, um, but it's not the same anymore. You don't have one person looking after one client and therefore they get to put their name on it,
Right.
which
So
makes it actually
anybody
more
kind of
fun.
coming, yeah, yeah. So anybody kind of coming in understands, well, it is a client of the business because I'm supporting with this, my specialism, rather than, and I guess that's probably an evolution of maybe the way the industry has gone, of going a bit like recruitment. I started out as a generalist recruiter, 20 odd years ago, and now I'm a specialist.
Yeah,
And I offer different value for that. I'm very honest with my clients. If they ask me to recruit something else, I could probably do it, but it's not my area of
yeah.
expertise. It's your call around that. So as a business leader, then kind of how do you maintain that culture within the business and kind of make sure that the brand, because ultimately that's what it is, the
Yeah.
brand is all these individual people and it's the client's perception of the service they receive. How do you make sure that that is aligned to kind of your vision of what PM+M should be?
It's hard work, don't get me wrong, because it is a continuous and constant conversation. If you mention values once a year or you mention culture once a year, it becomes in the fluffy box. So it's a nice thing, that's what they're talking about this time. If it's a daily conversation about, even yesterday, I asked somebody, what is the right thing to do here? And doing the right thing is one of our values. So by building those in and building the words in that we use consistently, like our vision is to be the best Northwest firm of finance professionals. One of our values is quality. So so talking about quality, how do we do something different whilst maintaining or improving quality? By using the words consistently, embeds them in, so it becomes a common language. And at that point, once it's a common language, if there's any behaviours that operate outside of that, they hit you smack in the face and you see them.
Yeah.
And the responsibility of everybody in the firm is to call it out.
That was going to be my next
appropriately.
point. Do you then?
Yeah,
So it
you've got
doesn't just
to.
sit with line managers to call it out; it sits with everybody.
Yeah, because who's to say I might not step out of operating within our, great
I'm sure
culture
you
and
don't.
values? I really try not to, but I'm not a robot and I'm not perfect. Nobody is. You might have had a bad night's sleep or something might have happened at home. The kids, playing up, trying to get to school or nursery or whatever it is. There's 101 things that might knock you off balance that might then you react in a way that you would have chosen not to if you could replay it.
Yeah,
And actually somebody providing you some feedback in the moment going, oh, Helen, I'm not sure that came across as you intended, or oh, that sounded a bit abrupt, are you okay? There's ways and means of asking and providing feedback without it being, well, that wasn't in line with our values, get rid of them. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
There's ways and means, because most people on this planet want to do well and want to achieve and want to be seen to be achieving and doing their best. So it's kind of it's just a very human thing. But yeah, the consistency of the communication is really, really important.
I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit now,
No,
and
no.
um, it's not intentional, but it kind of is because I'm asking the question. I really like the do the right thing value, but I imagine that's also the hardest one to ensure that you're aligned to daily. It happens to me as a recruiter. I've had, as an example, I had somebody contact me recently. She was looking for a new head of marketing role, and she was leaving. She resigned without a job to go to,
Okay.
and the reason being the culture in her organisation was that bad, and the whole of the marketing team were all leaving. And I joked and said, "Well, don't pass them on my number because it doesn't sound like the company sort of company I want to be recruiting for." Because I wouldn't feel comfortable about putting people into that environment, knowing if it's that bad, people are leaving without even a job to go to. And she said, "Well, that's funny because I was talking to another recruiter last week and I explained the same thing. And overnight, he got in touch with the managing director to try and pick up all the vacancies." And there's no right or wrong in that.
No.
That's my decision as a recruiter saying, I don't want to work with organisations that have a perception or a culture or a working environment like that. And that's my choice because I've worked in one of those and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that that other recruiter is wrong because he's chasing an opportunity to make some money. But for me, that was a decision of do the right thing versus do the wrong thing. And I feel as though I took my own ethical route versus chasing an opportunity to make some
Yeah.
revenue for the business. And that's just an example of kind of from my side. But I imagine, from you, I imagine you kind of get torn in those situations and it ripples through. And I guess, yeah, my question was going to be, have you ever been in that predicament yourself where you have had to go and have a quiet word with yourself going, I'm really tempted, like Jiminy Cricket's on one shoulder, you're tempted, but Jiminy Cricket's going, no, no, it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I think just to go back to your example then, for me, I agree. I think your what you chose not to do was the right thing, and I kind of um, I get where you're coming from with that and your ethics around that. I think a further step might be to actually go back to that employer and say, I'm not chasing the work. What I'd like to share with you is some feedback to actually help them understand
Yeah,
the perception that might be out in the marketplace. And that's a really sensitive and really tough conversation. But actually, if that was your business, would you want to know?
yeah, I certainly would.
Yeah,
I mean, you'll have come across it, through conversations with clients, and I'm not expecting to disclose anything, but I've certainly come across it a lot in recruitment where I will work with an organisation if they are prepared to make that change,
yeah,
but if they're ignorant to it and don't want to, then
yeah.
that's kind of dead in the water. Um, yeah, I completely agree. The right thing to do probably would have been to go back. Am I necessarily
Tough though.
always brave enough to do that?
No,
Not so much, because but it is. It's
it's tough.
it then depends on kind of how they they take
Yeah.
that and whether they're upset by it and you think, well, who's this guy or not. But as you say,
Yeah.
how
I think for
to,
us that value underpins everything else. So if we've maybe got a quality and an achievement, which are two of our values, and they're kind of clashing on a decision. So maybe we're up against a new, very quick deadline, but to achieve that, our quality might drop. And it's like, oh, which you want to do? Do you want to achieve the deadline with a drop in quality, or do you want to deliver high quality but beyond the deadline? And what's doing the right thing here? So doing the right thing is probably going back to the client and saying, look, this is where we are. You're asking for this, and have the conversation about it. Because quite often, once you put it in those terms, the client goes, oh, I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
I'll wait.
And I'll wait. I'll take the quality over achieving the deadline. You know, every
Or
decision is different.
I need it, but I really appreciate your honesty and transparency.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
say nothing in the world ever goes wrong by people over communicating.
No.
It's the exact opposite
Yeah.
way. And yeah, I really like that because it's how you kind of reframed tackling each different thing, and it just comes down to assessment. There's always going to be flex in those values. Nothing's
Yeah.
ever kind of black and white. There's always, well, we live in grey most of the time, don't we? I just want
Exactly.
to kind of wrap up then with the last bit about, for me, I'm not kind of doing this because of what I do, but it kind of comes back to recruitment. So you have a great culture, and there's that age-old adage of one bad apple can upset the apple cart. Do you do anything specific around your recruitment? Do you recruit around values or culture or competencies, or is there anything specific that, as an organisation, you do with your hiring process to ensure that you bring in the right people in who are going to both maintain the business at the level that you're at, but hopefully kind of raise the bar?
Yeah, I mean, all of those things that you've mentioned factor in. I think what we do that I think differentiates us to some degree is if we recruit apprentices and graduates once a year, and so we've had 10 people join us last September. We've got another 9 people lined up for this September, and that process and those interviews and the workshops that those candidates get involved in are led by people not much older than them.
Okay.
So they're the people that are in PM+M, say, I don't know, they're 20, 21 years of age, and they're looking at these 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds thinking, do these guys not just fit, but are they going to flourish? Can we get on with them? Will they get on with our clients? How does that all piece together? And that's not saying that we want clones of everybody, because we absolutely do not. We want diversity through and through. And we want people with new skills and new ideas and that ability to contribute and to develop our business. But we do that all the way through recruitment. So if we're recruiting for a qualified accountant, you won't find the partner in the room. You'll find managers in that room interviewing them, because they're closer to it. They're closer to what the actual role and responsibilities are, because they've literally just done them in the last few years, probably. A partner's thinking, oh, I can't remember, if I had to think back to being a qualified accountant, I'm thinking, well, the world's changed a lot. We used to have paper files, and we had one computer that we came back to on a Friday, and it was a rush back to the office to be able to use it. And we had portable printers. The world's so different that I'm irrelevant. I am irrelevant in that recruitment process.
I like that.
Yeah, and I think that actually really helps us, have a really positive recruitment experience for people, which is the feedback we get. And then the people we recruit, they're brilliant.
Excellent. So, just to kind of finish up then, so my last guest, Martin Baker, has left a question for you to answer.
Okay.
The question that he put forward was, what was the biggest mistake you made in your career, and what did it teach you?
Nice question. I think it's around not believing in myself. There's been certain junctures in my career to date where I haven't believed in myself for whatever reason. And so therefore, when I've talked about values and culture and somebody else's behavior has really tested me, I've not been brave enough to stand up to that. And so I guess my feedback from that is to say, if that happens to you, breathe, think, don't react, and kind of work it through in your own head. Find a coach, find a mentor to help you through that, build your resilience and learn quickly to be able to respond in those moments, because that will assert yourself in those moments.
I think some of that comes with maturity as well. We all look back and think,
Absolutely, absolutely.
I knew then what I know now, how different it would all be. But yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
That's not life's journey.
It isn't, is it? It is no. Well, look, Helen, we're finished. Thank you so much for coming on.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
No worries. See you soon.